Hey everyone, Nick Engvall here. Before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you about some of the people that make the sneaker history community and this podcast possible. It's more important than ever to think about who you give your money to when you're buying clothing to go with your kicks. Our friends at Guilty Goods started their brand with a goal of giving back, especially to the communities that make sneaker culture possible. With every purchase from Guilty Goods, at least 10% of the proceeds are donated to organizations like Big Brothers and Big Sisters, the Susan G. Komen Foundation, the Movement for Black Lives, and many more. You can save 30% on your order by using the code HISTORY at guiltygoods.us. Again, that's history at guiltygoods.us for 30% off, and you can feel good about your purchase knowing you're supporting a meaningful cause. Sneakers are all about presentation, and if you're like me, displaying your kicks at home or in the office is just as important as when they're on your feet. Sneaker Throne makes sneaker display cases featuring customizable LED lights, drop-side cases to showcase the entire side of the shoe, not just the heel or the toe, the whole shoe. They've also got display cases for trading card collectors and hat collectors. To me, it's the perfect way to display your collection. You can save at least 10% on your Sneaker Throne order by using the code HISTORY at sneakerthrone.com. That's history at sneakerthrone.com. If you're a Patreon supporter or a member of our Discord community, you already know about Kicks with V hot sauce and his small batch, locally sourced hot sauce. V has been one of the biggest supporters of sneaker history and the podcast since the early days. He's currently the defending champion in our community trivia nights competition. Kicks with V hot sauce has been a huge hit with the community. You can save 10% on your order by using the code SneakerHistory10 at kickswithvhots.com. That's SneakerHistory10 at kickswithvhots.com. Now, you're probably here because you like sneakers, and if you join the Discord, you know our community is about so much more than that. Whether it's the marathon-like community calls, trivia night debates, the in-person meetups, or just sharing our favorite experiences, we found that although we have such different backgrounds, we all have some unexpected shared passions. Not only does the entire community look out for each other when it comes to releases, we're like a support group for life in general. You can join the Discord community for free by heading to the show notes of this episode. After you're done listening to this episode, tell someone you like their kicks today. You never know how far a simple compliment can take you, and we all know how good it feels to have someone show their appreciation. Now let's get into today's episode.
Jordan trying to shake off Starks. Oh, what a James with no regard for human life. Final seconds. Bryant for the win. Iverson against Gill. The crowd on its feet. Allen for the win.
Welcome to the Sneaker History Podcast.
What up, what up? Welcome back to the Sneaker History Podcast. My name is Nick Engvall. Today I'm with my guy, Robbie Falchi, to talk some kicks. What's going on, man? How you been?
I'm doing good. I hope the volume isn't too weird because I can hear my computer really struggling to process the fans really loud. It's having a hard time getting ready to handle all the heat we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, definitely some nostalgia on the way in this episode.
Man, that was corny and true. Let me tell you, my computer is being really loud. It's like,
oh man! So we were thinking about talking about specifically the last episode of the Last Dance, or last couple episodes, I should say, of the Last Dance. But figure we wait until Mike can be with us to run through all of that stuff. But we got some good stuff on the way, and if you've been on the site today, we've got some good stuff for you on sneakerhistory.com. So before we get into that, though, I want to read a review, as we usually do, although we've been slacking in the past few weeks. But the last one I think we need to read here is from Mario Restores. Shout out to Mario. He's actually a guy that does sneaker restorations from my hometown of Sacramento, and he's got a pretty nice little selection of work. If you check him out on Instagram, he's Mario_Restores with 2 R's. He said, "Do yourself a favor. Go subscribe to this podcast. Great knowledge and great interviews with awesome content." So thanks for the review, Mario. We definitely appreciate it. Sitting at 100 right now. I don't know.
Episode. I asked really nicely for more. I guess we'll have to wait a little bit longer.
I always feel weird about asking for reviews. Do people care if we ask for reviews? Do you even listen to us asking for reviews? We're just trying to build the podcast. We're trying to get some more people in the community, more people talking with us. And sometimes I think that it's a moot point to even be asking for reviews, because honestly, most people probably listen to this while they're commuting or on their phone, where they're not like actually going to be on iTunes where they can give us a review. So but it is nice to see the reviews. We definitely appreciate it. And we also appreciate all of you who are supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/sneakerhistory. I'm in the middle of kind of revamping what that looks like because I just bit off a little more than I could chew with the original, idea of what the Patreon would become. And I've got some new merch in the works for our Patreon members. We've got some giveaways for Patreon members coming up. So keep an eye on that. This week we'll have a whole new kind of framework for our Patreon, and also potentially some new episodes going up over there too. So, but anyway, we appreciate all of you for supporting us and listening. And now that business is out of the way, you want to introduce them into this whole story episode?
Yeah. So Nick very nicely, along with the help of Brandon Elder, Chris Elliott, and Rennick Bowen, put together this list of the first three-peat sneakers. So pretty much all of the sneakers from the first championship three-peat. It kind of goes a little bit before. Well, if they know it doesn't, it starts with the Jordan 6. But it kind of fills in the gaps, too. So it's not just the literal shoes from those three championships. It explores the shoes of the competition, exhibition games like the Olympics, stuff like that. Well, the later one will kind of have the Olympics, so I kind of got a little tongue-tied there. But ultimately, it's just every shoe broken down. I know a lot of sites are doing this right now, and a lot of people have been covering The Last Dance frantically or fanatically or, unapologetically. There's a lot of additives you can use there. But ours, I feel like, gives a really homey feel. And I mean that in the best way possible, because the insights from people who really, really care about the products, not just as consumers, but as aficionados, as fans, as dreamers. You can even go that deep with Michael Jordan. So I feel like our list here is pretty next level. Praise be to Nick for helping create this beast. But that's about it. That's the long Reader's Digest version of our list here.
Yeah, so I basically just wanted to kind of create something that I guess documented this in a different way, right? Like, we've all talked about the Jordans, and obviously if you listen to this, you know how much we love Jordans and Nike basketball, but I wanted to make sure that we got some of the other players on the list. So when I kind of went into this, my ultimate goal is to make this something that I can update and add anything that I missed. Like, I know for a fact right now that I missed about 7 or 8 different shoes from those 3 seasons. And I just need to make sure that I have the right images and the backstory and all of that stuff. So,
it's real. I mean, like fatigue. So yeah, okay, you missed a couple of them, and there's been a lot of stuff about Jordans, but the human brain can only take so much. So
yeah.
Ain't nothing wrong.
Well, so one of the things that I always run into being a fan of Reeboks is that a lot of the people that write about Reeboks, and this is no shots at anybody, but a lot of the people that write about Reeboks don't necessarily know the models or the shoes that people wore. And I'm not any better than those people, but I will put in more work than anybody else. So that's how I ended up getting jobs at Complex Sneakers when they started that. That's how I ended up getting a job at Soul Collector, at East Bay, at Finish Line. Like, I will outwork everyone, and it's to a fault, right? I don't turn off, and I'm working on literally 45 minutes of sleep for the last 48 hours, but that's how I work. I get so into it that I'm just like, go, 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 push, push, push. And I say that because part of this was triggered because there was a blog that I came across from a few years back from a, trustworthy news source of sneaker information. And they have the absolute wrong shoes for some of the most important moments, in my opinion, throughout the Bulls' history. And I understand that because it's really hard to find information, especially if you're just starting to look for this stuff, because the algorithms destroy what used to be good about sneakers on the internet. You could go into a Nike Talk forum, you could go into a Soul Collector forum, you could go into like the deep depths of a GeoCities or a Blogspot blog and find all sorts of information that, people like myself back in the day were just like, I'm just going to start putting this out there and find people to connect with that appreciate sneakers. But seeing that and seeing the misinformation just frustrates me. And I don't mean it in a way that's like demeaning to anybody, because it's a struggle, man. Like it takes forever to find the right information sometimes. And the biggest frustration for me as somebody who's worked for and with alongside a lot of these brands for many years is that there's nobody at the brands that knows these stories. One of the reasons why Nike is so successful is that they are really good at making sure that they capture those stories, they capture those moments for 10, 20, 30 years down the road. It's the same way that we're watching The Last Dance, right? And with, the other brands like Asics, Adidas, Reebok, I mean, this list has some LA Gear, like Pony, there's a lot of brands out there that have had so many ups and downs and so many people coming in and out of the business that to find information on some of their most important moments is literally impossible without somebody that's passionate just scouring the internet or scouring old magazines or scouring old books to find the information. So the whole gist of this is that it is a work in progress, but I want it to be a place where anybody that's listening to this can come back to the site and find what shoe this backup player for the Bulls wore in, 92 or whatever that is. So that was kind of my motivation, theory on this whole thing. But of course, I want to also just start with the Jordan 6, right? Because to me, and I hate to bring this up for you, Robbie, but for me, that moment of Mike switching to his left hand is the most iconic Michael Jordan moment for the start of his winning. Unfortunately for you, it was against the Lakers. I just wanted to start there because if you're going to talk about the Bulls championships, to me, you start by talking about the year Jordan 6.
It's funny you said, and people always want to preface that conversation with sorry for the Lakers. But it was time. No Kareem, old Magic, old Worthy. It's just it was time. Or maybe Worthy was gone already. I think Worthy no, he was still playing. But every dog has his day, and the Lakers met a young dog named Michael Jordan, and it was his day. That was a great moment, though. Like the switch, I think people call it, right?
Yeah. Yep.
You can't mess with that. The 6 is perfect. Like the infrared 6, for as inconsistent as the retros can be, which I've always found odd, knowing what you just said about Nike having like historians on deck, both internal and external, and yet that infrared color is different every single time. That kind of blows my mind. But that shoe, people wanted to be like Mike before the 6, but I feel like once you're a champion, everybody really wants to be like Mike. Like it's fun to be James Harden and have the scoring titles, have an MVP. That's cool. Like people want to be like James Harden, but people really want to be like Steph Curry, who had the championships, the hardware. And Mike himself said that in the documentary, he wanted to be, he wanted to get to, Magic and Larry's level and then surpass them. But you got to get to their level first. So the infrared 6 and the Jordan 6 as a whole was the literal stepping stone into championship pedigree. So, of course, you have to start there.
It is kind of interesting. I can't really speak as much as I might like to on this, but, Nike let go of some key employees about 4 years ago that were, in my opinion, super essential to maintaining those stories and maintaining the kind of legacy of people that are there. And it's nothing against the people that are working there now. I mean, you and I have hung out with people, many friends there, right? Both of us have many friends at Nike, and it's challenging because it's a big company. And a lot of times the idea of somebody who is, more of a historian and an archivist and somebody who's going to capture those moments and make sure that the company preserves them doesn't always fit into the big corporate kind of mentality of let's make this money, or let's inspire people with our marketing or whatever those things are. Right. And I don't have anything against those things. I think to me, that's what good leadership is finding that, ways to recreate and reinvent who you are as a brand when you're really not doing anything different than you've done for the past however long. But it is kind of unfortunate to know how those people kind of get overlooked. So I hope that people listening to this and people that read sneaker history and see what we've done and what I've done through the years really kind of understand that, like, my goal with all of this stuff is to try to capture as many of those moments as possible to pass along to people that would not have seen them otherwise. It's the reason why I don't get into kind of new release stuff as much as everybody else, because that kind of stuff is plentiful right now. And I would rather, as corny as it sounds, I'd rather be here, talking to you about the Jordan 6 and then moving into our next shoe, the Asics GT Drive, which nobody remembers Asics having basketball shoes. But that's what I think is important, is understanding the whole picture of what's going on during these moments. And so off the high horse there, but next up on the list, Cliff Levingston, one of the big men for Chicago in the early years. I think actually he won two titles, I believe. But he's wearing a crazy pair of Asics, and I couldn't quite find like a great picture of the shoes independently or of him in the shoes. But there are a couple of shots where you can see what he's wearing. And what's crazy about this in like my research for this shoe is that Asics actually makes basketball shoes right now in Singapore. Like, they have some pretty good looking basketball shoes in Singapore. So if you want to see what, yes, Asics, like the Ronnie Fieg collabs running shoes only brand here in the US, makes like modern basketball shoes in other countries. So if you want to check them out, there's a link on this post. But yeah, just the site is, obviously sneakerhistory.com, and you'll see the first three-peat blog post somewhere on there. But it's just really interesting that those kind of things slide under the radar. And that's part of what I love about digging into research stuff for posts and going a little bit further than you normally would. Did anybody know that Asics was making basketball shoes overseas? I would love to know if you do.
You love shoes, because I'm looking at these Nova Surge by Asics for $220. And bruh, you could, we dog Klay Thompson. Like, the Klay Thompson Antas make these look like, Jordans, like Rolls Royce Jordans. Like, I will say it is kind of cool how they have the gel in the heel. They have a visible gel, like they're running their patented gel technology. But they have a Blaze Nova, the Glide Nova, which is a low top. There's one theme I'm seeing here, and that goes all the way back to, Cliff's Asics GT Drive. Asics knows how to name a shoe, because they don't look good, but damn, they sound good. Like, I'm interested in a shoe called the GT Drive X. Like, what's up? Like, I'm totally down to try that shoe out.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I thought. And then you have stuff like the LA Gear Kaj, Kaj, Craig Hodgetts, pretty much the Craig shoes. But Craig, man, if he wouldn't have gotten hurt, he would have been like the truth.
Right?
Craig Hodgetts got hurt his leg, or either his leg or his hand.
I can't remember how he got hurt, but I remember, and I forgot this as somebody who watched him win back-to-back three-point contests. But I forgot that he won back-to-back three-point contests. Like, he's just one of those players that, because I think it's the interesting dynamics of the Bulls specifically, right? Because they had great players in all these role player positions, right? And they all kind of just like disappear because you are only looking at Mike, you're only looking at Scotty, you're looking at, Horace Grant, Rodman, etc.
They're the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's, the Caj, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And it's even cooler, he's wearing the real GOAT's shoes while playing next to Michael Jordan. That's amazing.
And I actually messed that up. He's actually won 3 straight 3-point contests. The only other player other than Larry Bird to do so, which is kind of bananas.
Yeah, I mean, and you would think with the Steph Currys and Klay Thompsons and Bradley Beals of the world, there would be more. They don't even have reoccurring champions a lot. Like, it changes it's a crapshoot, really. So to win 3 in a row, that's muy impressive.
So one of the things that I thought was interesting as I was digging into this, so there's more shoes, as I said, that need to be added to this list, but this was like kind of the best of the best for me as a starting point. And I was actually blown away. I don't want to get too far ahead because I do want to kind of stick to the order that I put them in here. But I was actually blown away at how many LA Gear shoes the Bulls wore during that first few years of winning. Next up on my list was Scottie Pippen, the Nike Air Bound, which, there's a few different versions of this shoe, I think from 90, either late 90 to 93 or early 91. And what I think is crazy about Scottie Pippen's shoes in general is that they were almost like ahead of everyone else because he wore a lot of different stuff. But like specifically this Nike Air Bound made me remember when I was a kid, of course I'm a Kings fan, so purple, right? But like this is like pre-Kings being purple. The Air Bound released in a limited edition colorway that was all Concord. And I remember seeing it thinking like, okay, that's wild, because you got to remember this is like 91, 92, 93. You hadn't even seen like all red Maestros from Scottie Pippen yet. So the only colored shoes that you had in your mind were like Spud Webb's Ponies, Jordan 1s. Like none of the original colorways of shoes back then were that bright, right? Like it reminded me of how crazy the black and red Chicago, or the black and red Jordan 1s and the black and red Airship were, because they really were like completely different than what you saw on court. And I remember seeing this particular shoe at like 12, 13, 14 years old, thinking like, what the hell is that? And it was like the first time I remember wanting something that was like completely outside of my comfort zone, because I'm not like up until that point, I was very much like, let me rock my, Bulls colors together, or my, Carolina colors together, or my, Hoyas colors together, all of that stuff. Like I was very much like, just mash this shit together and don't go too far off the beaten path with the shit that you wear. But then you get to become a teenager and you're like, fuck everybody. I'm just going to wear whatever the hell I want, and I'm going to be loud and obnoxious with everything that I wear, and all my sneakers are just going to be conversation starters. So, I mean,
it's dope you say that, because like there's always the UNCs and Bulls, the teams MJ helped make popular, but UNC's always been popular. The Georgetown colorways, those have been staples in basketball since the 80s. What's so cool about like the purple pair you're talking about, of Flight Lights, Air Flights, Airbound. I can't talk right now. The Airbounds you're talking about, that really was, I can't think of a time before then where a shoe was that tonal and bright on a Nike basketball. Scotty really pushed, and while keeping it low key, right? Like you might have a 33 on the back, or so I might say Pip might be pretty understated, much like him. But when you look and, feast on the details, he really did push basketball like design and like style in a different way than Michael did, but in an equally important. Like not everybody is Michael Jordan fan. Much like there's LeBron haters now, and there's like Federer haters. There's always been people who don't like the greatness. So I feel like you could kind of drift towards Pippen style and like the GRs he had before his signature shoes, and rock with his style, and be trendy and like in with popular culture, but not be riding Michael Jordan's coattails.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, one of the other things about the Airbound that's really fascinating to me is like if you look at the white and black and gray colorway, right? It's easy to see like there's two things when I look at that shoe that are like really, really crazy. One is the swoosh is completely wrong, right? Like it doesn't look like a Nike swoosh. It looks like a bootleg swoosh.
It does.
That aside, the shape of the swoosh being off, it's like, okay, it looks like a Nike basketball shoe from the early 90s. But my favorite detail on it was the Flight F. The F of the Flight logo kind of like, I don't know what you call that, like embossed or like pressed into the midsole. And I don't remember ever seeing that before that point. You saw it on the Air Force One, but it was like, outward, right? But this was kind of like the first time where it was like, wow, they incorporated it into the design of that, like, heel cup area. It's worth, this whole episode is going to sound like me just telling you to go to the site, but like, it is really fascinating to like, look at this stuff now and think like how far we've come as the way footwear design and technology has progressed. But yet how much all of this stuff set the standard for moving forward in the right direction. And the next shoe that's on the list is actually one of those shoes that I think is incredibly important that we don't really talk about the reason why I think it's important. And it's the Nike Air Flight Light. So this is a shoe that was worn by Scottie Pippen on the Bulls, but it was worn by Gerald Wilkins. He was in the ads for the shoe. You got the like Citron colorway. I think had like the clear outsole on the Citron colorway was one of the first like shoes that outside of Jordan's that I remember seeing, where I was like, wow, this stuff is actually progressing. But the Flight Light was actually a lightweight shoe, which you don't look at it and think that, because you look at it and it's a massive 90s basketball shoe, right? It just looks bulky as hell, but it was actually really lightweight. And this being like 91, 92, the technology and the foams that they use, I forget the name of the specific foam that was used on this shoe right now, but this was the stepping stone for shoes like the Ergo LWP, the Scream LWP, like the Agassi LWP, like all of those shoes in that like 94, 95 LWP range. The basis of that started in 92 on a shoe that you look at and don't even think that it's a lightweight performance shoe.
I can see it. I mean, compared to things like, the Air Strong and stuff like that, it looks bulky in terms of like, let's take the Flight Light High. So like, yeah, that has a really kind of bulky wing to it, but it doesn't mean it has to be a heavy wing. And they're fresher. I mean, I like these more than the Airship, for example. And a lot of people don't even think about the Flight Light existing. But if you look at any of the Olympic photos, Michael Jordan wearing the 7, you're going to find Scottie wearing these. And it's one of those shoes that doesn't ever really get retroed. I can't tell you the last time the shoe was retroed. I'm trying to think if I've ever seen a retro of it.
I mean, I know they did like the like Bulls colorway and the like lime Citron colorway, probably like 2012, 2013, but it's definitely a long time since it happened. And it's probably not a popular enough shoe for it to actually happen again. I mean, anytime soon, at least.
But what's crazy is we see the Olympic Air Force 180 Barclays, whatever you want to call them, We see those retro, not with a lot of consistency, but more than the Flight Light. You see pretty much every Olympic Air More Tempo or was it Flight 96?
Mm-hmm.
No, those
Swing
are all
flights. Yeah.
Yeah, but the Flight Light, I mean, and these are tough too. Like I really like the Scottie Pippen number on the back. It's just a shoe we don't get treated to enough, and that will kind of get forgotten in history. And it's why this list is important. And so that the Flight Light gets talked about once, at least a month.
And as you were saying that, I was like looking ahead to the next shoe, the Pony M100, which is another Cliff Levingston shoe. The Pony M100 is a massive shoe. This is the same era, the same years that like the Flight Light is coming out. Is basically a shoe that looks like it's still stuck in the 80s, right? Me being like overly into sneakers, this is actually a shoe that I have. I picked up. I had an original pair like way back in the day when I was a kid, but I got trying to think of who the collaboration was with. I think it's Oct Amsterdam did a denim version, and I picked that one up. I can't remember when it actually released, but it's probably 2012 maybe.
Yeah, that shoe is firmly set in the 80s. And as we look into that, it's funny how like these had that same Virgil Louis Vuitton vibe, which had that same what shoe did this rip off? Or maybe it ripped off this Pony, and that's why it looks so familiar.
So this Pony is very similar to like the Avia shoes that came out in that same era, right? So like actually I touch on this in the blog story or the article or whatever. Like Scottie Pippen was wearing those Avias early in his career, right? He signed, I want to say like late 88, early 89 with Nike. And up until that point, he had been wearing the low top Avias, which share a like crazy amount of similarities to this Pony M100, which I think probably is probably kind of like the way, if you look at running shoes right now, Boost is, Adidas cushioning, but Puma uses a version, Saucony uses a version, everybody has a variation of it. The same with like Nike and the Joyride, and then Puma's Cell stuff, right? Like everybody kind of has the standard box that they play in, so to speak. And then occasionally somebody goes far enough outside of it to like push everybody towards new things. But this particular shoe is one of those that personally I'd rather have this than a pair of Louis Vuitton Virgils, just because there's actual like story and nostalgia behind the shoe. I don't dislike the Louis Vuitton stuff. I just don't. I feel like it seems a little forced, I guess.
A little bit. I mean, speaking of things that were forced, so next up you have Horace Grant and the Pump Omni Light. Like, pump technology was the most forced. Like, all right, basketball, jumping, you pump up a basketball. All right, let's pump up these shoes. Like, I've always wondered, like, what kind of speed the guy was on when he designed that shoe. Like, all right, basketball, pump, shoe, pump, jump, pump, air. It's just like vision board must have been crazy. But like those, I feel like did try to push it into the new decade, right? With the design, because it still looks clunky, but like the Flight Light, the Omni Pump Light isn't very heavy comparatively, and it is pretty sleek for the era. Like, it just goes to show how from Pony to these shoes, to like the late 90s Nike basketball, that to like the early 2000s Adidas got really light. It's just like light's all relative, bulkiness is all relative, and the Omni Light is still popular now because I feel like it bridges all three of those times, or it bridges many times at once while still looking good.
Yeah, it's kind of wild how different things were, right? And it kind of sets the tone for like the change of everything that was happening, right? Mike was pushing all this, guys like Scotty and, even, eventually like Horace Grant and, BJ Armstrong, all the guys that were in that first like kind of three-peat eventually moved into more modern shoes with, similar to, like Jordans, right? But the rest of the shoes that were being made were still, I feel like a step behind, so to speak.
And so on that same topic, this grinds my gears all the time, and it's a little baby tangent. Like, it grinds my gears because I feel like Nike doesn't innovate and push the same way they used to. I feel like from what you just said, how Jordans look so different than what was around them, like that is the Nike way. Like the Foamposite, all these other shoes we'll talk about in this episode and the next are going to be designs that were forward thinking from Nike. And I feel like they were come up with a great idea first and ask questions later. And I feel like a lot of stuff now gets caught in asking questions first about how it can be profitable or how it can work, or it's all these fine tuning things. When in all reality, things like even like the Presto and the Flight Light, like these shoes were trying different things, and I felt like then they were throwing the thing out there and seeing if people soaked it up instead of testing the likability of a shoe so much, or having all this R&D on something before because you're afraid of dropping a bomb. It drives me nuts. I feel like all these early, and the 90s as a whole, Nike basketball has kept pushing forward and like being unapologetic. And I feel like that kind of, it ended with like the battleground stuff. And it comes back from time and time again. But this is like the height of Nike being like, all right, come catch us. Like, we're going to go put this shit out there. And here we are 30 years later still talking about it. So it worked. But I feel like we don't have that same kind of, dry fast mentality with that brand that they had back in the day. And I feel like nobody does. It's 2020. Times are different. It's not Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah. I think that's always been kind of my question, because I don't look at what's going on now and see like how, if I'm a teenager now, how do I get into this and be into it for the long term? Right. Because it's not that you have to go work in the business. I think you should always do something that you're passionate about, or at least do something that is like empowering you to do the stuff that you're passionate about outside of work, right? Like whether that's, financially or scheduling or whatever. But I look at the stuff that's happening now and I just wonder, like, and coming off watching The Last Dance, this is kind of an obvious thought, but there was so much of everyone paying attention to all of these things that with everything so fast paced now, will people remember it to will it be important enough for them to remember and talk about in the future? Right. Like, let's take, for instance, the media day LeBrons. I personally think they're dope. I think, if I'm a Laker fan like you, of course, that's a bananas shoe. Like, you're probably going to think about that and keep it in your collection for a long time, because it's very significant in LeBron coming to LA and bringing back the 7 retro and all of those things. But it's also one of those things where it's like, cool, it dropped. What's next? And do we forget about those moments? And I genuinely wonder, like, how people feel about that. Do you still feel like things that happen now can have that same level of nostalgia, or are we kind of like, I don't know what the right word is, but are we kind of killing the traditions and the nostalgia speak with the like fast paced social media, like, hey, here's a moment, but we turned it into a meme and now it's no longer the moment, like crying Jordan is a perfect example. I think it's hilarious, but I also totally look at some of these things and think, like, I don't know, like Mike speaking at Kobe's, what you call it? I don't know, funeral, but like, that's not the right word, but Mike speaking at Kobe's, gathering and him crying again and talking about it being a meme is a really interesting thing to think about for me. And I wonder if that impacts our ability to appreciate the things that we are, consuming and using and buying and, just like generally watching as we live.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we really like to ride Michael Jordan with that crying meme just because he's Michael Jordan and we think of him as this untouchable being. And that's why we've enjoyed The Last Dance so much, is because we get to see the personable side. And it's not really, I don't like that Jordan crying meme, man. Like, we all cry. Let the man live.
Yeah, true. Definitely. I mean, and I, I'm with you. I guess like I don't have I kind of just push it out of my thought process in a sense. So I don't even think about those things when I see a meme or whatever that is. But I don't know. Anyway, let's keep moving forward. So you mentioned the Omni Light. So this is one of the things that I think is really fascinating. And I mentioned this in the article. I wonder if people really recognize that there were like 5 or 6 variations of the Omni pumps, right? Like there was the pump OmniZone, the pump OmniZone 2, 3, 4, the Omni Light, which is what, is traditionally just said as like the D Brown shoe, even though he had his own shoe that was also a pump that, from a distance might look similar. For the general population, they probably don't see a difference between any of those. And I wonder about that because as somebody who's like a fan of Reebok and kind of has been a fan and collected Reeboks for a long time, I am drawn to these the same way, and the differences, I'm drawn to them, and I see the differences and the uniqueness of them in the same way that like you and I would look at an Air Max 90, an Air Max 1, an Air Max Light, an Air Max 95 and be like, oh yeah, these are clearly all different shoes. But the average person probably looks at them all and goes, oh, black shoe, white accents, orange basketball pump on the tongue. It's the same shoe. So I mean, I don't know where I was going with that, but
no, I mean, I like that you say that because I mean, with the D Browns, kind of the same way I was wearing my Air More Up Tempos and some, oh, those are the Pippins. It's like, well, yeah, they are, but they're not. But they are. Like, tell me a passerby is really going to know the difference between an Up Tempo 97 and the Pippin 1. Probably not.
Yeah, definitely not.
I mean, so this next shoe, I do that. Like, I really get the Torsion Artillery by Adidas mixed up in with just like every fucking Adidas shoe from that time. Like it's all this, I know they're all not the same, but I feel like Adidas in the early 90s, they were all the damn same shoe until Kobe came. Maybe before Kobe came, but like before 94, they weren't all that different.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely not wrong. I think I even mentioned like this in the story, but I think Adidas was really trying to figure out who they were in the late 80s, early 90s. They had some successful shoes, the Top 10, the the
Kareem. So 70s and 80s, you have Ewing before he had Ewing brand. You had Kareem before he went with LA Gear. Like you had like a decent stable of shoes, and then it's just like you're competing with Asics and you're competing with Pony and you're competing with all these other brands. And I feel like they this is another shoe that's just like caught in that mix. And then you have a Flight Light come out and it's like, all right, this shoe is completely different than the Adidas, Asics, etc. Like this Adidas shoe is just like a product of the time, maybe. I mean, Duke wore these. I'm pretty sure Christian Laettner wore these. Like before Duke had Nike, they were Adidas right before the Grant Hill times, I believe. Or maybe even with Grant Hill, they wore Adidas. I think Grant Hill's rookie year, they wore Adidas.
Yeah, I mean, and Christian Laettner and Bobby Hurley both wore.
I know for a fact Bobby Hurley wore the Artilleries. I know for a fact.
Yeah, I know Bobby Hurley did. But like that's the interesting thing about Adidas in that time, and it really shows like the progress that they made as like Kobe came in. You know, now we look at it and it's like feet you wear is like a normal thing. You see it on all this stuff. They try to represent it in new ways, but I can't overstress how important it was for them, because that was the thinking and the mindset that took them away from, you know, these kind of traditional big bulky shoes where you really had to be involved with the shoes in order to understand what models were what and why the Artillery was more of a guard shoe. I don't know. It wasn't even really a guard shoe though, right? Because I think Laettner played in it, which obviously he was not a guard. But like that's the problem, right? Like you have a shoe that is arguably less chunky than previous models or other models in the lineup, but yet it's still like not to the level of like 1992. They're like Christian Laettner's playing in the Artillery, which looks like a shoe from 87, 88. Maybe even further back, while, you know, Jordan's in the 7, Pippen's in the Flight Light, you know, the Hirachis are right around the corner. Like there's just so much progression happening. So to me, it's really cool to like actually look at this and think at some point in the 2 to 3 years that followed from this shoe coming out. And I actually love this shoe. I have a few of them. They did some really cool collaborations in like the kind of early 2000s as retro models. But like from where the Artillery was over those like 2 to 3 years, went from a shoe that was basically square, boxy, and overly cushioned and overly padded to stuff like the Crazy 8, the Kobe 1, like in the course of just, yeah, like all that stuff happened. Then you get into like the EQT, which was, you know, the crazy like slip in boot thing where you could change the colors of the inner lining. So like Adidas, what's that?
The Adidas Street Ball?
The Street Ball. Yeah, that's another one. But like, you know, think of like the Adidas EQT, right? Like the EQT basketball was essentially Nike's Huarache technology, but with a completely removable, changeable sock liner. So imagine like the Jordan 7 or a Dynamic Flight or something like that that has Huarache or Huarache basketball, but instead of it just being in the shoe and attached where like that fit is over the top and over your ankles, it's the entire booty is one piece. That was the EQT basketball, which is even crazier because then you look at that and think, if you were just walk into a store, you know, take where we're at now out of it. If you were to just walk into a store and look at what the Nike Huarache basketball is, I'm going to preface this by saying I love that shoe, but look at what the Nike Huarache basketball is, how the actual inner booty doesn't wrap the entire foot. And then you look at the Adidas and say, wow, I can actually, this is like a sock liner that I can change, that I can wash, that I can change the colors of, that I can like completely customize my shoes. Yet, you know, I don't want to say that the EQT from Adidas sucked or tanked, but compared to the Huarache stuff, nobody cares about those Adidas EQTs. Partially because even though they went with a cool sock liner and the customizable aspect, the shoes are really bulky. And I say this as somebody who's owned both those shoes. I love both those shoes. I wouldn't play basketball in the EQT for the life of me, but I would absolutely still play basketball in a Huarache basketball. Same shoe, 92, 93 era, completely different perspectives, even though from first glance, you would think that the Adidas was way more advanced in terms of technology.
Facts. I mean, speaking of booties, the Air Jordan 7 is up next. And I think like that's like two of my most favorite marriages in Jordan history are the 7 and 8, because with the 7, you have it kind of married to the Huarache basketball, and the 8 was kind of married to the Air Raid. You know, it's like, you know, they're significant other. They're together but different. You know, they're like, you don't look like your wife, so to speak. So it's like, you know, they're a couple. You can see you can see why they're together, but they both offer something different. And the Jordan 7, we talked about this in one of our Patreon episodes, I think is one of the most comfortable Jordans ever because of the booty. Like, I love everything about that shoe. I mean, the only thing bad about it is how badly the toe box likes to crease up and bubble. Like, you get a really big bubble toe. I call it clown feet sometimes. If you tie them too tight at the bottom for too long, they just start bubbling up. But the 7, I feel like, was like the realization of what the 6 should have been, because the 6 is just a bulkier version of the 7. Like, you cut down the ankle, you cut down the thickness of the forefoot. I believe the tooling is just about the same, but like, you know, there's not visible air. You have internal air, but just the fit of the 7 and the tongue and everything about the upper just feels better than the 6. And it's just like a natural progression between the two without it feeling recycled. Like, I just love, I don't own very many 7s. I think I only have 2 pairs now, but I'm in love with like 10 of them. Like, the 7's just always been a really visually appealing shoe that has the comfort to boast. Like, I could still wear that all day. I can go put 5 miles in, go walk Hollywood, you know, all day on vacation and be comfortable in that shoe.
You think the 6, 7, or 8 is more comfortable?
Ooh, I think the 7's the best of the 3, because the 8, for as much as I love the way it looks, I think it's on that bulky end. The straps and the ankle get to be too cumbersome. I like how the 7's wings, you know, the sides of the 7 around the ankle are really flimsy. Some people don't like that, but it's aesthetic for me. Like, it looks cool without it feeling like it's really there. The 8 is just the 8, and the 6 and the 5 to a degree had this really, really hard ankles. And it's just, I would definitely pick the 7 of those 3 in terms of premium comfort.
Yeah, it's really hard to say now, because I think of all the different stuff when I'm putting them on and wearing them. I don't think I have any 7s right now. I'm so terrible. If I were to give one piece of advice, don't buy sneakers. Like, that's my advice for everyone listening. It's just
right.
such a, but I love it. But I think like the 6 is probably my choice. I'm with you on the 8 being a little bulky. I was never a huge, like, it's hard to say like you're not a huge fan, because I feel like inherently as someone who grew up watching Michael Jordan, I love every shoe. Like, even the 15, the 2009, the 2010s, like all of the Jordans that are.
It doesn't matter. Like,
yeah,
we don't own one of them. Doesn't mean I hate that thing. It's like, no, I just don't own that one. It's just, but between the price, need, and timing, those 3 didn't match up. So,
yep, exactly.
Come around. Like, it's so funny you say that, because it's like, I was saying before we record, I still don't like 14s, yet watching The Last Dance got me thinking real salty about the Last Dance, the Last Shot 14s I didn't buy at the Nike outlet for like $90 2-3 years ago. And now I'm like, damn, I wish I had that shoe. And then the person who has like a sensible mind within me says, you have 100 other Jordans in there. You know why you didn't buy them on sale. You don't need them for $300. Like, let it go now. Like, I feel like I'm like parenting myself constantly with an internal dialogue with shoes. So yeah, do not buy shoes.
So I'm in the same boat. And, you know, so I guess like kind of wrapping up, we got plenty of other stuff on this list. I just suggest that you go check it out. Everything is kind of click through. You can slide through some slides for almost every shoe. You can zoom in on the pictures to see a little bit better look. I try to get examples of everything, but in general, the worst part about having a podcast about sneakers, a site about sneakers, posting sneakers all the time, is you would not believe the stuff that I find myself looking at on eBay or on random sites, just thinking, why would I ever buy this? But also having to like talk myself out of buying things that I would enjoy for a split second when it showed up and I'd be excited about it. And then a couple weeks later, it'd be on a pile and I'd forget about it.
Man, I mean, it's the realest talk. Like the Flints, like before the Last Dance last night, I believe you texted saying there's probably going to be a drop. And I knew it. I didn't even open it because I didn't want to have the short endorphin burst of being in sneakers and trying to get a pair. And if I got them, I would do exactly what you just said. They would come in, I would look at them, I would be satisfied, I would close the box, I would put them underneath 3 other pairs of shoes, and I would maybe see them next year. So it's like my big goal. Like I've let go of, since I sent Nick and Mike a photo of the shoes I'm selling, I think I've sold 9 pairs in the past week.
Wow, that's pretty good.
It's a rush. Like for as much as it is fun buying shoes, it also feels really good getting rid of them. Like it's a weird kind of like satisfying feeling. Not even because I'm making money off them. I'm selling like Lunar Glide 5s for like $40. You know, it's like I'm not balling. I think the coolest thing I sold were my 72 and 10 Jordan 11s. So I was like, ooh, opportunity sell because of the Last Dance. And I already have 8 other pairs of mid-top 11s. I never wear these. Peace. So it's just like, you got to be real with yourself. Like, all right, you already have the Cherry 13s and you already have the Playoff 13s. Are you going to wear the Flint 13s? Like when you start getting into collecting at our levels, you're just like, all right, I'm at number 5 of this model or number 6 of this model now. Like, do I need, like, that's why I own 2 pairs of 6s now. I think I had 8 at one time. I don't even like 6s that much. I mean, I like them, but it's just like, when you have $1,000 worth of shoes, you're meh about. You're
so tripping. How long until you see a pair of 72 and 10 Jordan 11s and are like, damn it, I wish I would have kept those.
Yeah. I sold them on Friday, and on Sunday I was like, damn, they still look good. I mean, I'm not like, I mean, that's the thing. Like, you got to have real conversations when you get let go of stuff. It's like, I like the way these shoes look, but I also I was looking at the Space Jam box and I was looking at the bread box. And I was like, these are the same shoes, but better. Like, of the 3, I would keep these 2 every time and get rid of this one. So just get rid of it. Yeah. It's like, I need to watch Marie Kondo, but I know what she's about. And it's like, you got to like see if it really does spark joy. And if it doesn't, you got to let it go. But with sneakerheads, you know, we can find anything can spark joy. Like, you can get joy sparked off of like a 3-year-old beat up pair of Continental 80s. We're so weird like that.
Yep.
You have to get through. I have to get past the first phase of, ooh, I love the 72 and 10 Jordan 11, and get into the second phase of, I haven't worn these in a year. And then the third phase, I need to let them go. So it's just like,
yeah,
it's really tough, especially with the Last Dance, man. Sneakers reselling higher. I'm going on a tirade, so I'm gonna stop talking. But just, it's hard in these streets.
So true, man. So true. But I mean, I guess that should be probably our parting words. We hope that, you know, looking over this list, if you take the time to do so and watching The Last Dance, you don't get too crazy. Or if you do, just embrace it and go all in. That's what I typically do. But then you end up with piles of shoes everywhere. So we appreciate everybody listening. And anything else before we wrap up?
Do not spend stupid money on resale sites for last shot 14s. That's my PSA. You're not worth $450. They're going to come out 3 years from now and then be on sale again. Chill.
Probably some really sound advice if you were to ask me. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody for listening and rocking with us. We appreciate your support. If you do have a minute, head over to iTunes and leave us a review. Or if you want to get in on some of the new merch and some of the giveaway stuff that we're going to be putting on our Patreon page, patreon.com/sneakerhistory. My name's Nick Engvall. You can find me at Nick Engvall on all the platforms. But more importantly, just follow at Sneaker History. And Robbie, let them know how they can find you.
You could find me doing everything but putting out at RAHBEE702.
Right on. We appreciate all of you, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.
Peace.
What up, y'all? This is Nick again. First, I wanted to thank you for listening to the Sneaker History Podcast. It really means a lot that you would spend a part of your day rocking with us. Before you take off, I wanted to ask a few favors. If you're looking for more content from the Sneaker History crew, head over to patreon.com/sneakerhistory. Our Patreon members get access to exclusive episodes of the podcast, our latest merch, giveaways, and much more. You can become a member for as little as $5 a month, and it really goes a long way supporting the crew. Next, make sure you're signed up for our email newsletter. We share updates about the footwear business, some of our favorite finds and deals, and other sneaker-related news a couple times per week. I like to think of it as a one-stop shop for the sneaker game, or at least a work-in-progress one-stop shop for the sneaker game, if you know what I mean. Last but not least, tell someone you like their kicks today. Whether online or in person, social distancing in effect, of course, it helps make the sneaker community a better place, and you never know what conversation and opportunity might come from it. As always, we appreciate you, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.
Hey everyone, this is Nick again. Before you take off, do us a solid and head over to Apple Podcasts to leave us a review. Give us a rating on Spotify and Amazon Music, and make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel because we have even more video content coming soon. Speaking of new content, we have an amazing community of sneaker enthusiasts that hang out in our Sneaker History Discord on a daily basis. While sneakers is a connection point that brought us all together, we've all discovered countless shared passions that we have in common with each other. We recently launched a couple of new podcasts directly from our community. One of them is a Formula One podcast. If you're an F1 fan like me, the Exhaust Notes podcast is your weekly fix of Formula One fun. It's hosted by myself, Rohit Malhotra, and Todd Yates. New episodes drop every Tuesday. I've been wearing fitted hats for years and collecting my favorite teams since I was a little leaguer. It has been awesome to see so many new fans getting into fitteds in recent years. Crown and Stitch is our new talk show about fitted hats with Dexter, Keith, and myself, where we talk about fitted hats, snapbacks, throw in some obscure hats because we all kind of like some funky stuff once in a while, don't we? Copping, collecting, and so much more. New episodes drop every Wednesday. Hit the links in the show notes for this episode to give our new shows a listen, and be on the lookout for more new podcasts dropping soon. Last but not least, tell someone you like their kicks today. You never know how far a simple compliment can take you, and we all know how good it feels to have someone show their appreciation. Thank you all for the support, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.